One day, Lamar and I were walking the track, and he had to go to the law library. And he said, I don't mean to cut it short, but I have to go to the law library. And I said, oh yeah? What are you working on? He looked to his left and his right. He said, I know you may not believe me, and many people say this, but I'm actually innocent. And I looked to my left and my right, and I said, you know, many people might say this, and you might not believe me, but I'm innocent too. And we both broke out laughing. He said, no, I'm serious. I said, no, I'm serious. And it was just that moment where we was looking at each other. Both were in prison for crimes that we didn't commit, and we became friends before we even knew it. We made a pact on that same yard, and we turned to each other and we said, listen, we don't know who's gonna make it out first, but whoever does, promise to come back and get the other. And it was a deal.
I lived in St. Louis City, and my story is probably the same as a lot of guys who grew up in the inner city. I grew up in a particular neighborhood that was a hot spot for police officers who tended to target young black men who lived in that area. One of my friends, short story, was killed as a result of it. And I was immediately suspected by the police, and the train left the station, and I ended up coming to prison. Well, in the beginning, I was more hopeful. I thought that it would all turn out, the system would work, and I would be released. But that's not how it ended up.
Lamar was convicted mostly on the testimony of two witnesses. The first was an eyewitness who the police pressured into making an identification of Lamar. And the second was an incentivized informant witness who testified that he had overheard Lamar make an inculpatory statement. He told the jury about that at trial, and he was given a deal in exchange. And those two witnesses and what they testified to, their false testimony at trial, it was compounded by the fact that the state committed misconduct in Lamar's case. There was information relating to the eyewitness that they did not disclose to the defense. In addition to pressuring Greg Elking, the police had also paid him and paid for his family to relocate, paid utility bills for his family. The jury never heard that information. It was never turned over to the defense. And same thing with William Mock, the informant witness. There was a bunch of information that the state never turned over to the defense, and that the jury never heard about William Mock's criminal history and his history of being an informant witness.
Fortunately for me, unfortunate for him, I came home August 15, 2019, after being exonerated, and had to turn back over my shoulder metaphorically and see that Lamar was still languishing inside a maximum level 5 prison. That didn't sit well with me. And so I immediately began working with the legal team that he had already had in place, playing my role in making sure that we was to elevate the awareness of Lamar's wrongful conviction until we brought him home.
I mean, Lamar Johnson's case is a clear case of actual innocence. I mean, there was no doubt that he did not commit the crime for which he was convicted. On the one hand, it was an easy case in that sense. There were so many things wrong with it. On the other, it was one of the most difficult cases of my career. And I think it will always be that.
But as I'm sitting there, I don't know, I was in total suspense. Once he told the bailiff to pass out his opinion, Lindsay and Charlie Weiss, they did exactly what all of us who read opinions do. We go directly to the back because it tells you exactly what the ruling is.
Circuit Attorney of the 22nd Judicial Circuit filed herein for the benefit of Lamar Johnson is granted.
I happened to make it first, but I honored the pack. I honored the pack. And with the legal team of the Midwest Innocence Project and the many other lawyers who helped push Lamar out the door, February 14, 2023, I was able to watch my best friend come home after 28 years of being wrongfully convicted, and now we get to go from PAC to impact. And that's what we look to do together, is to create impact in our criminal legal system.
Back on the streets.